Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a new set of monitors by Hedd. Had these here in the studio for quite some time, and the model number on these is the 05A MK2. There's also a digital version of it, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So the ones we're going to talk about today, they're the analog speakers, which means there's no digital control whatsoever, as there are on many modern monitors these days. And so we're going to get into that here in a second. So who is this company, Hedd, H-E-D-D? Well, if you're familiar with Adam audio speakers, I'm a huge fan of Adam speakers. I've been using the A77Hs and prior to that, the A77Xs for over 15 years, and I absolutely love those monitors. One of the things that's always made Adam monitors so special is their ribbon tweeter design. It's kind of a different take on tweeter design than we see in other monitors, and it really enabled the high end to be very smooth, very delicate, not harsh, in a way that was very pleasing, and you didn't get ear fatigue, and you really got to get the opportunity to really get a fantastic mix in the high end of your mixes. That's one of the things that stand out the most. Other than that, they're just outstanding speakers across the board. Well, the gentleman who invented that ribbon tweeter, who really started Hedd, is a man by the name of Klaus Heinz. And so he is involved with Hedd along with his son, Freddie. Now, Freddie's a fantastic guy. I've enjoyed talking to Freddie a lot. And I get the feeling like he's very, very enthusiastic about these speakers and this company. And I can see why after kind of using these speakers here for over 2 months here in the studio, as well as my video editing room upstairs. I've really put these things through the paces, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So Barry, when you're talking about analog, kind of explain that to me. All right, so to get a set of analog speakers, in other words, there's no digital control. And I mean, I'm going to oversimplify the digital aspect of it just so you can understand kind of the nuanced differences between them. With digital speakers, what you can do is be able to, what I'm going to call time align all the various frequencies so that they're getting to your ears all at the same time. There's no lag behind one or the other. But there are some digital to analog conversion happening on top of what's coming out of your DAW, out of your interface. So there's still going to be that. Now, oftentimes many digital speakers will have a digital connection, like AES as an example. So you're not doing the analog or digital to analog, and then analog to digital, and then digital to analog back again, which would have those last two steps would happen inside the monitor. So you can keep it digital, but there is going to be some conversion. But what it enables you to do is basically get a perfectly flat frequency response, which is really what you want out of a set of studio monitors. You want it to be as flat as humanly possible without any bumps in any frequencies along the way. And that's harder to do than a lot of people realize. So that's one of the main advantages of a digital set of speakers. But there's also some issues that come with that down the road. For someone who's really sensitive, and I'm really nitpicking, super sensitive to timing issues, there can be a sense of latency. If someone's laying down a track and monitoring through those speakers at the same time, there could be, for those who have delicate hearing, it could affect their ability to perform. Although I cannot overstate enough, I think that's relatively minor. So when you get into the analog side of the world, okay, you don't have that. So, you know, they pretty much do everything they can to get the flattest curve possible, but there's going to be somewhat bumps or dips in the frequency range in a set of analog speakers. And so they're also lesser expensive to make. Keep in mind that the vast majority, overwhelming majority of mixes done over the last 50 years were on analog speakers, okay? And so the digital forefront and really incorporating that in today's monitors is really more of a recent kind of thing when you look at it in broad terms of the history of this. Maybe 5, maybe 10 years. And so what it does is it enables the manufacturers to kind of take some shortcuts per se, because the only way you could really get that true flat frequency response is really in the design of the cabinetry inside of it, and then pairing that with the right size woofer, the right size tweeter. Maybe you have a mid-range in there as well, depends on the monitor we're talking about, but really pairing those together to try to get that frequency flat. And so but they can actually do it digitally now. And for the record, my Adam A77 X's have, or A77H's, have the ability to control these parameters digitally. You can control them via an app on your computer, or you can do it manually in the back. So So how do they combat with these set of speakers in the analog world? Well, if you were to look on the back of this, and I'll probably pop up a picture of it, the back of these speakers, you would notice that there's a treble and a bass attenuator. And what that does, it enables you to kind of make those adjustments and dial that into your room, knowing, pulling up a mix that you're very familiar with, you feel like you've gotten a great mix with it, and trying to play that back through it and to see if you're still hearing the exact same things or as close to that as a balance between the high end and the low end. And so you have the ability to monitor that. And what they also give you the ability to do, if you're in a space that's not very well treated or maybe completely untreated, it's a way to kind of compensate for that to some degree. There's no replacement for having a properly treated room. I think we all know that at this point, but there are ways to compensate for it, okay? And so that gives you the ability to do that. So you can get the timing of that high end and that low end really kind of to match each other up as best as you can with a set of analog speakers. So that's kind of the cornbread English, the oversimplified version of what those differences are. So obviously these speakers here, I think they retail at $699 each, okay? Whereas the ones with the digital, I think they're at $999. So $300 more to get the digital, but you get a little bit more control over it. So you have to make that decision whether or not you can justify that, understanding the principles of what I talked about. Now, I will do a more in-depth review of the digital version of these speakers. Well, I'll speak more to that in greater detail, but today I'm going to be talking about the analog set of speakers. I've had the ability to be able to test a lot of different monitors. And so I can really get a good feeling for how one performs against the next. Although there's always going to be some degree of limitation with that, because if I were to do them one right after the other, I might be able to better be able to give you perspective on it. But when there's gaps in between, like there have been with me, you have to go back. I had to go back to my notes and really, because I take good notes when I'm testing things like that. And so I can go back and refer to them later in case I ever needed to do something again or have that as a reference point. And when it comes to monitors, that's proven to be quite handy for me. So I tested these here for a total of 2 months. They first started out, now I'm going to talk about, I think the first thing I did, and this is controversial these days, but I thought it better safe than sorry, okay? And that's speaker break-in or burn-in, right? And so you've got some companies that still say you need to do it. Atom Audio is one. And then you've got other monitor manufacturers like Neumann who say it's completely unnecessary. So where it lies in between, who knows? I don't know. But at the end of the day, I wanted to play it safe. So I went ahead and burned them in. You can't hurt anything by doing that. So these played at varying degrees of levels of volume over the period of 48 hours. And the way I'm able to do that is to really point those speakers at each other so they kind of null each other out so it's not blaringly loud. But I would set a timer and go in and adjust the volume over that time period. And so they were broken in. Whether it was necessary or not, that's up to you to decide, but they were broken in. So now that you know that, I did that. I first put them in my video editing suite upstairs. Oh, okay. It's a room with a desk where I edit my videos. Okay, let's call it video suite. But I used them up there. Now that is not a treated space in any way. And so I did a lot of voiceover editing and things like that, background music and other things. I do video work outside of what I do for the YouTube channel, so understand that it's not just this type of editing that I'm doing. So I did that there, and I was able to compensate for it considering it's an untreated space. Now, the way I tested the ability to be able to do that in an untreated space is I pulled up some mixes that I had done down here, and I took them up there, and I wiped everything clean, and I just mixed everything back together and I really wanted to see what kind of a mix am I going to get up here versus down in my studio downstairs. And I will tell you, they were remarkably close. They were not identical. Then again, it's hard to do two mixes identical to one. I think we could all understand that. But I was certainly satisfied with what I was able to get, although I would much prefer to be doing it down here. So it's not going to completely make up for those things. So I don't want to paint the picture that you don't need to treat your room and these can compensate for it. No, they will help, but they will not compensate for it completely, okay? Then I brought the speakers down here and put them in the studio. My A77H's are off in another room right now, and so I've been using these. You can see them, right back there, both versions of it. I've been using those now in here for quite some time. Now, when I do my normal mixes, when it's super important to me, I pull the A77H's back out, connected those up, and did it on those because I'm very comfortable and I know those speakers inside and out. but for the sake of testing these, I did that. So I took some of the same mixes that I did up in the video editing suite. Here I go again, suite, the room upstairs, okay? I took some of those mixes and I redid them down here in this space and remixed them down here, and it was better. It was better. Would the average listener notice a huge difference? Probably not, because I think we're kind of in the business of being nitpicky about these things. But I think I was very pleased with the results of both. However, that said, I would have much preferred other people hear the mixes I did with them down here. So I'm going to get into my opinions on these speakers, and I think that's really what you're here to find out. How did I think they perform and where do they stack up? I'm going to do that in just a second, but I need to do a little bit of housekeeping first, so bear with me for a second. I don't take outside sponsorships. I've never been paid to make a video, and I never plan to ever be paid to make a video. I want my honest opinions to be solely my own opinions, and I'm quite known to be quite critical, and if I find something I really like, I will praise it. I have no problem doing that either. However, I've started a side business where I have a woodworking business where I make custom desktop enclosures for various control surfaces. Now, you can see right here, I've got them now for the Avid's S1 series as well as the dock. I can do 1, 2, 3, 4 bay, however many you need, put those together and make that. And so this is the most recent one I've done. What makes these so fantastic at the end of the day is this ankle. Now, you could, if you use the S1 and use the dock, you already know that Avid already put them at a slight angle to improve the visibility of everything on top. However, I took that up another level and I got them to where they're now sitting at a 15-degree angle, of which I have found has been ideal. What that does is I can read every LED. I don't need to bend over to look and see. I never need to lean forward. I can see all the LEDs. I can read everything. I can see all of the dials, all of the buttons perfectly at that angle. And it really does make this process so much better. I'm sure I'm showing you some other pictures of things I've done in the past with this, but what these also do ultimately is put them in a footprint that looks fantastic in your studio. So bear with me for now for 60 seconds and kind of watch this video. Well, maybe you didn't know this, but I sponsor my own videos. I don't take outside sponsorships. I have a side business called Artisan Woodshed. You can go to www.artisanwoodshed and check out what we offer. I make custom desktop enclosures for a lot of different control surfaces. Today, I've got them out there for Softube's Console 1, as well as their fader, both of them in the MK3 version. In addition to that, I make them for PreSonus's Fader Port 8 and Fader Port 16. Again, you can go to the website and check those out. I've recently introduced Avid's series of control surfaces where I can make it for a single dock or a single S1, or maybe you've got an S1 and a dock. I can do a 2-bay, a 3-bay, or 4-bay, whatever it is you want. All you got to do is go to www.artisanwoodshed.com. So I encourage you to go check these things out. I work really hard for you guys, and I'm always trying to come up with new ideas, things that I can make that are helpful to those of you in the studio while bringing a bling. My goal in all of this is to be able to make something that does just that. It looks absolutely beautiful on your desk in your studio. The next thing up, I want to put these control surfaces at an angle that makes them so much easier to use, And then lastly, I try to do the best I can to make them affordable. And so when you can put all that together, it's really quite a great bang for the buck. I've got nothing but 5-star reviews, whether I've sold them on Reverb or via the website. I haven't had a single negative review. I haven't had a single one below 5. So that tells you that people are very, very happy with them. And I know you will be too. So go to www.artisanwoodshed.com. Lastly, I have affiliate links with Sweetwater as well as Thomann. If you go down to the link below in the description of this video or any of my videos and you click that link, whatever you add to that cart, I'll get a tiny, tiny cut of it. That's how I keep my views honest and direct for you without any implications or any outside sources affecting my opinion and what I have to say. So I appreciate if you support me either via the website or the affiliate links, and it helps me kind of keep doing these videos for all of you. Now let's get back to this video. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I will say that one other thing I'm working on here lately is I've recently bought a 3D printer, and I've designed the ability to take the next evolution of these control surface desktop enclosures to the next level, so that, in other words, like this is a 2-bay unit right now, the way it is right now. If you went to a 3-bay, you would have to kind of sell this and buy a new 3-bay. And I didn't want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do it to where 3D printed parts, where you just come in and you buy the extra 3D printed parts, and then you can expand it as far as you want to go and still maintain and keep the side panels on it that are so beautiful in your studio. So That's something I'm working on right now. I'm still research and development, so I'm not quite ready to release that yet, but no, that's coming. All right, so let's get back to talking about these speakers. So how well did I think they performed? Let's talk about the low end. These things will go down to 43 hertz out of a 5-inch woofer. That is impressive. Very impressive. When it comes to the low end, these monitors are going to accurately tackle the majority of genres out there you're going to mix. Not all, but the majority of them. For some others, you may need to incorporate, and probably would naturally incorporate, a subwoofer with them. But these were, you could get some significant low end to the point I was actually stunned. I was stunned at how much low end I could get out of these. You know, I think I'd mentioned before, I'd done some video reviews of Cali Audio, of which in their price range, I thought did a very good job. I did another review of Adam Audio's A7s as well as other speakers. And those are in both of those sets of speakers performed outstandingly well in their price range. Now, these are going to be a little bit more expensive. These speakers, if you go to them, you're going to that next level. These are $700 each, which is $1,400 for the pair. Okay, so you are getting a lot for that, but they are a little bit more expensive than those. So it's not a true apples to apples comparison, because I know those are the questions that people are going to probably put in the comment section. Hey, Barry, I saw your review of this. How do these compare to that? I will tell you flat out, as you would expect for a speaker that costs quite a bit more, these are way better than either of those monitors. But then again, they're not competing in the same price range. That doesn't deter or take away from those sets of monitors that I just talked about, okay? So it doesn't take away from it at all. Not everybody can afford to go into $1,400 monitors. But if you're looking to take your thing to the next level and you can afford $1,400, these are monitors that you would consider along with some others. So when it came to the low end, I was very impressed that I could actually hear and feel frequencies in the lower registry of things. I found the bass to be powerful, very powerful. There was these things have a 100-watt power amp in them. So when you crank them, a lot of times in monitors like that, you can start to get really flubby in the low end and honestly, to some degree, start to experience some breakup. I didn't get any of that. Cranked all the way up, I didn't get any of it. And so the low end of these was absolutely phenomenal. Again, going down to 43 hertz, all right? That is impressive, very impressive. As far as the high-end frequencies, okay, these will go all the way up to 50 kilohertz, okay? So, well, I guess your dog's going to hear stuff between 20 and 50 because we don't really hear anything above that. But they didn't just take it to 20, they took it beyond that. The logic behind that, I don't know. You'd have to talk to them and figure that out. But the bottom line is, you're covered as far as the frequency spectrum is concerned. So before I talk about the high end, let me talk about how the mid-range sounded. For me, the mid-range is the most important part of any set of monitors. Yes, we all love to get in our cars and crank up the bass and feel the power of the thump. We all like to do that. But a great sounding mix is done in the mid-range. So you carve out and you allow all those frequencies not competing with each other. The mid-range is where you want it. And I found the mid-range in these to be outstanding for the price. Outstanding for the price. I could hear a separation, a stereo image, a front and back kind of pull back and forth to where the mid-range, I was able to hear and precisely dial in an EQ thing so that it's not competing with each other, and incredibly well. Incredibly well. Now, keep in mind, I'm putting this all in the price range. You go out and buy yourself a set of $4,000 monitors each, and of course you would expect that. But to get that level of clarity, of stereo imaging, of really, really being able to hear the detail in the mid-range, that is phenomenal at this price range, as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely phenomenal. The high end is where many monitors really struggle, especially in the lower registries. Or not lower registries, but the lower price point. That's where monitors can really start to struggle a little bit because compromises have to be made to get speakers into a certain price range. Oftentimes, they'll enhance the high end and low end and not spend enough time focused on the mid range. Again, the most important part, in my opinion. But so that's why if you're playing just, reference tracks are going to sound fantastic. But if you're trying to create a mix, it can be somewhat challenging. And you have to learn that aspect of them. I don't feel like I had to learn anything with these. I don't think I never felt like I had to learn these speakers in my room. They just were very, very natural. So the high end, that's where you tend to get a lot of ear fatigue. You get a lot of ear fatigue. It can sound really harsh at times, especially some things more in the high end. The sizzle can be overemphasized at times, both in the de-essing as well as cymbals or any other thing that may be of a higher registry. And these, my guess is, it's probably why I love my Atom monitors so much. And especially when it comes to the high end, it's really all boils down to that tweeter. And that tweeter design, that ribbon tweeter design is smooth. It's delicate. Yet at the same time, it retains the right kind of crispness. It maintains that. It retains it. And so as far as all those put together, these monitors performed exceptionally well in the low end, unfreakingly incredibly well in the mid-range, and very smooth and easy sounding and wonderful sounding and pleasant to the ears in the high end. Now that said, you can do all three of those and still sound like crap, because it's all about how that hits you at the same time and how you can keep that in the stereo image and you keep that front to back, right? If one frequency is getting to you at a higher rate than the other one, right, or lower or a slower rate than the other one, that's going to affect these things. It's going to affect your decision making. It's going to affect your long-term listening ability. All of those things are going to come into play. These, in this price range, are probably the most balanced monitors this guy has ever heard in this price range. Now, in fairness, I've not heard every single set of monitors here. And this is kind of my opinion. We all look for different things. Many of us look for different things and have different expectations out of monitors. You wouldn't think that we would, but we do. We come to our own conclusions differently, which is why I feel it's so important that I don't just get a set of monitors and use them for a few days and come out and do a video. I do my work on them. I spend the time. And I think that's important because I have a responsibility to tell you exactly how I feel. And I can do that with confidence because I've been putting these things through the paces for over 2 months. Freddie, I'm sorry. I know you probably would have preferred to have this video out sooner, but I'd rather do it justice and do it the way I'm doing it right now, because I will tell you, these Hedd monitors are phenomenal. And I strongly, highly recommend them. The easiest way for you to find out is buy from a manufacturer that has a good return policy, like Sweetwater. Maybe use my affiliate link. But wherever you want to buy them from wherever you want to. Put them through the paces and see what you think. I'll be very surprised if you don't come to the same conclusion that I do. Very, very surprised. So I rarely find myself in a situation to where I put out this much praise for a product. I can almost always find flaws in some aspects of it. And I always talk about those when I find them. Now, when I put this into perspective of $1,400 for a pair of studio monitors, compared to a set of monitors that I use in my studio day in and day out that are over twice that expensive, if I had to work with just these, I would have no problem with it. Do I prefer my Atom A77Hs? Yes, I do. But at the end of the day, they're twice as expensive. And when it comes to this, when you get into this level of quality, and I'm talking quality, the manufacturing aspect of these things, they are solidly made, which is a kudos to typical German engineering and manufacturing. They know how to do it right over there. And that's where these things are made and assembled, and they've done an outstanding job. And so I can't find fault. I cannot find fault. Freddie, well done, buddy. You've done a great job with these monitors, and I hope other people get the opportunity to enjoy them the way that I have. So if you like what I've talked about in this video,
Go check them out. Go check them out. You will not go wrong, okay? Don't forget about my affiliate links. If you need some control surfaces, I also will start making for other desktop things, like, picture like, if you've got a universal audio desktop like a Twin or something like that, I'm going to start making them for that. So anyway, keep that in mind, www.artisanwoodshed.com. Go check it out. If you're just interested, go check it out, okay? But until next time, hope every one of you have a great day. Bye-bye.